I mean, he's like a runaway buffalo, isn't he? You don't stop him from that distance. Here he comes sniping away, the baby-faced assassin. Again.
Nakarawa! Samoa, there's that grubber again. Here we go. Nene Williams lost it back. Capria. Here we go.
Live, Jason. Holy smokes, who would have known?
Mate, it's the weeks are flying by. The leaves are falling. We're well into fall, and the mornings and evenings are a little bit cooler, mate.
I definitely was smuggling some Smarties at training this week. I tell you that for free. For those that don't know what that is, good luck in Google. But yeah, it's a little brisk around this time of the year. Exciting though, good rugby.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we had effectively 10 games of university rugby across men and women across the prairies.
Yeah, that's right.
That's unreal.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. So
I finally got out to support my boy Vinnie and the mighty Dinos men's rugby team. It's wow, what a beautiful facility you've got there in the University District of Calgary.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky in the sense that the field's been there for a while, but since they built that University District, like, you know, we're pretty spoiled. You go for a little walk, you can get some food, you can get a beer, you can get a coffee. You know, it's just perfect. You know, you can go for an early morning breakfast, walk down, get into coaching, get into rugby, and all be within walking distance. So yeah, we're pretty lucky they put that little district there. So happy to be involved.
No, that's awesome. It was great to get down there, and the weather, mate. The weather has been absolutely perfect for rugby. Not too cold, not too hot, no wind. It's been so mild and beautiful. So yeah, almost wants you to get back out there and have a run around. But geez, I feel a hell of a lot better the next day not playing.
I can second that. I mean, I was looking at the game. We played at 12-2 there just at the university.
Yeah.
And at one point, I had to take a layer off. And, you know, in the fall, that's very unusual, having to take a layer off in order to stay, you know, relatively neutral in temperature. But overall, pretty good day. Now,
I can imagine all the young ladies there would have been going mad seeing the big fella top off.
You know, it's like when you go to the zoo, you just wait for something exciting. That was the excitement. I'm excited,
especially around feeding time.
Basically, you just hear the rampage.
Yeah. Now, sorry, go on.
I was going to point out, I had a buddy of mine. He reached out and he said, "Oh, that guy's wearing a Two Blues jersey last week," and I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "They were my rivals." I was like, "Can't tell Jace that. Can't tell Jace that." My understanding.
Merriweather Carlton was our arch rivals.
That might be the one. Yeah, I did. To be fair, he was pretty passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I'll need to go back to him and ask him. But I was pretty excited to see someone recognise a jersey that I don't know. I haven't been there, but someone from across the pond, all the way over in Scotland, going, "That's a Two Blues. They're our rivals." Like, it just shows you in rugby that rivalry still exists, and it's
a global sport, mate. It's a global
fantastic.
Sport. Yeah.
Oh, you can't beat it. So I'm curious, Jace, what are you representing today? I'm trying to kind of poke my head down the camera to see it, but
no. There's no. It's a hat today, mate, but it's a little bit left field. This hat is 32 years old. Ooh. So I'm not sure if you can see that. I might try to get a little closer, but it says the Red Heifer Grill.
Yes, all right. Lawson.
So the Red Heifer Grill is in beautiful Mudgee in the Central Tablelands of New South Wales. I had 3 glorious years with the mighty Mudgee Wombats, and played a lot of awesome country rugby. But the Red Heifer Grill, that was our go-to after the games, and you love it, mate. You walk in there at 6:37 p.m., you go and order the steak, and then you cook your steak on a massive open grill yourself. Absolutely marvellous. Absolutely marvellous.
Do they have chickens kicking about just to cater for those that don't eat meat?
I'm sure they did, mate, but
you just bring your own, I guess?
I was straight in the red meat line. I didn't worry about the other lines.
No surprise, nor would I expect anything else. What's the so you played there, you said country. So what's the difference between country footy and not country footy in the terms of Australian rugby?
Well, I mean, other than the seriousness of it, but this was part of the what they call the Central West rugby tournament. So um, country towns like Orange and Bathurst and Cowra and Lithgow, and of course Mudgee. So usually most of those country towns have got a first and second grade with usually one or maybe two Colts teams, and then I know that they've now got a women's team. A lot of those towns have got women's teams, and they've also got incredible juniors programs as well. So when I was there, there was only a population of 9,500 people, right? So
What's
you
much?
know, Calgary is what 1.3, 1.4. So you can tell how small it was, but a massive farming community. There was a coal mine close by, but any opportunity, you know, work hard, play harder. So yeah, the mighty Mudgee Wombats was home for me for about 3 years in my I think from the age of 17, 18, 19. So yeah, this hat
But you were
brings
a
back a lot of
Colt.
memories. Anyway, mate, before we run out of time here, what are you championing there?
So I thought I'd rep the classics from the Can-Ams.
Hey,
So big shout out to the Canadian Classics. I was lucky enough to be invited there for one of the Can-Am series. He's down in
yeah.
Boston, and what a tournament that was. So my little rain jacket here.
Are they off to
Obviously
Bermuda soon, mate?
they are. Yeah, luckily we had a couple. There's a couple of guys here from the local prairies that were invited. Calgary boy, Paul McNiff.
I bumped into
And
Paul at your game on Saturday. Great fella.
yeah,
Yep.
and so first time, he played classics, first time out in Victoria for the Mavericks Classics, and then got invited out to Bermuda here in November,
Mm,
along with quite a few. I mean, if you look at the Canadian Classics teams going, it's a pretty solid team. Like
it
that's
is.
awesome. Another
Yeah.
local boy that made it, Larry Ross, also. He's an Edmonton boy though, not so much a Calgarian, but still good to rep. Prairie
Yeah.
boys repping Canada out in Bermuda, so
Yeah.
super excited for that. And then
What about
I'm sure
Sean
that,
Tyndall, mate, from Red Deer?
yeah, Sean Tyndall went last year.
Mm,
The initial selections that I seen, I didn't. There was no other Prairies boys on there that I recollect.
mm,
But that might change in the build up to it because I'm sure there's still a few more selections, or there might be a few injuries because there's still some people still playing. Not that you
magic.
wish injuries on anything, but that may change. But yeah, we're pretty
Yeah.
good. I mean, repping the local Calgary boy, local Edmonton boy, and then
Yeah.
obviously Sean has went in the past. There's quite a few guys that have been from the Prairies that have went in the past, but
Yeah.
this
Oh, it's a
upcoming one
great it's a
pretty
great
cool.
program, and who wouldn't want to go to Bermuda on a rugby tour?
I tell you, man, getting to Bermuda is that's the pinnacle for Canadian classics, right? You get your red
Yeah.
blazer, you get to go. So there's a lot of guys, obviously in that age, 35 plus, that are playing
Yeah.
classics. And that's the end goal. The end goal is to get to Bermuda for quite a few of them across the entirety of Canada. So,
Yeah.
Tom and Chappie and the team over there that organise it, they do a stellar job. Tom likes to keep me on my toes by telling very, very proper jokes, we'll say. And I'm sometimes a bit baffled, even in my Scottish sense of humour, to reply. But he's a good old lad. Rugby is still thriving in that family.
Yeah.
So super excited to be
Awesome.
involved with that.
No, that's fantastic. So we're gonna rip through around the grounds, Vinny, because we
Oh,
have a magnificent local legend guest coming in today, and we want to let them have the stage. So get us through the university rugby, mate. As I mentioned, I had the pleasure of dropping by and watching your boys run around, but let us know what happened in all the other games over the weekend.
yeah, definitely. So some of the scores are still waiting to be posted. I think we had
Mm,
lots of games this weekend. So on Saturday we had, what's that, 6 games on Saturday, then
mm.
3 games again today. So we'll start off with MRU Sate, 36-19 for MRU. MRU also played their development squad against the Colts, which is the Calgary Mavericks
Yep,
Colts team out of the
that's
CRU.
right.
And the score was a little one-sided, but again, good for developing rugby. Obviously good to grow the sport.
Yeah.
Sate played U of A, both teams. So in PUMRC and development, the scores for that will post just as they come in.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get them up. They're a bit late in getting to us, eh?
Yeah, those ones were just from today, so they were only finished playing not so long ago.
Yeah.
From Saturday, U of A played UBCO, so that's right now that is a top of the table clash.
Right.
And UBCO came away 28-17. So
What a
that's
game.
just making that that's making my life as the Dinos coach a little bit more difficult because it pushes us further down the table.
Yeah.
UFC played U of S and it was 34-7. And then our development team, the UFC Red team, played the Edmonton Gold, and the
Yeah.
final score was 53-24. Today, U of A, on Saturday, played Lethbridge. Their second team, their development team, played against Lethbridge. Still waiting on the score for that one, but again, we'll post that.
We will,
today, we had one other game, and it was UBCO versus U of S. So UBCO and U of S doubled up. They played yesterday and they played today. So did U of A. So did MRU. Not MRU. SATE played back to backs. So there's a couple of teams there that would have had some hurting bodies. I know that in that UBCO U of S game, UBCO were victorious 39-14.
Successful weekend for them, hey?
Yeah, successful weekend.
Yeah.
Talking to their head coach over there, Dan. They picked up a couple of injuries today, a few kind of hospital visits.
That's no good.
Not so great. Few kind of serious injuries, but we wish those guys all the best of recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you would never want to see that, but they got the win, which is good. So they'll be able to go home and enjoy maybe a beer once they're feeling better. One women's game this weekend for the university. It looks like
Only
Calgary
one,
had.
eh?
Yeah, it looks like Calgary had a bye. Only game was Lethbridge versus Alberta. So Pronghorns versus Pandas, and Lethbridge were victorious 29-24
Good on
yesterday.
them.
So yeah,
Good on
lots
them.
of exciting there. I mean, that's a tight game, 29-24. That's way better than some of the games we were talking about last week where it was there was a few blowouts. So really exciting. That would have been a good one to watch.
Fantastic.
But yeah, that's the around the grounds for the university stuff.
That's outstanding. Do you happen to have games on hand for next week's fixtures that we can run through, or have I put you on the spot there?
So next, actually, because we're coming up to Thanksgiving, Jace, there's a bunch of games that are happening on Thursday. There's 2 games that are happening on Thursday. There are no other games on Thanksgiving weekend. So
everyone's hanging out for turkey.
That's it, man. That's it. We've got to give the guys a rest as well. So Thursday, so Wednesday, October 9th, and Thursday, October 10th, University of Calgary play Mount Royal University. So a local Calgary showdown. Wednesday night is the development squad at 5 p.m. at the University of Calgary. And the Thursday, October 10th, is the University of Calgary versus Mount Royal in the PUMRC. So that'll be the top team. So those 2 games, local derbies happening there.
Is that 5 p.m. as well, kickoff, Vinnie?
Yeah, 5 p.m. Yeah, just for the light and stuff.
Yep.
And then there's one other game that is up in Edmonton. University of Alberta is playing the Edmonton Gold in their development league, and that is at the Clansman Rugby Club. So 3 games coming up this week.
Rugby Club. Love it.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. We've got some of my coaching staff, or one of my coaching staff is from the clan. Young Tina Prescott, she keeps me on the straight and narrow. Reminds me, some of the young gentlemen at the weekend asked her if she dibble-dabbled in rugby, and she had to remind them that she's got almost a 20-year career playing in the front row for the clan. So that was interesting to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
I love those conversations.
Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but that's the best part.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see university rugby still charging through. What are we, midway through the season now, mate? Would that be fair?
Yeah, we're coming up. So these games coming up, the ones that just happened would be game 3 and game 4 for some clubs.
Yeah.
And then we have basically 2 more weeks. So the guys that play on Thursday, that would be game 4 for those guys. And then the week of the 19th, that'll be game 5. And then the following week to that is playoffs for the PUMRC.
Okay.
So it's not a long season. Like the end of October is effectively playoffs in Saskatchewan this year.
Yeah.
And then if you win playoffs, so if you take the playoff title, you go to nationals to represent the Prairies.
Yes.
And that is out in Ottawa in the middle of November.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun.
There's not a ton of time to get yourself prepped, get through playoffs. If you win, and this year has proven to be very competitive, so it's going to be it's not going to be a cakewalk for anybody.
International rugby has settled down a little bit, but as we already know, we've got the women's, or the WXV, the tier 1, 2, and 3. Let's go straight into tier 2, because I know that both you and I have got some interest in that, and you'll be happy to know that both your Scottish women had a win. So they had a win against Japan. That was 1913. And these games were played in South Africa, of course, Vinnie. And then on the same day, my Wallaroos beat the hosts, South Africa, 33-26. So as you can see by those scores, very competitive, very close games, which is exactly what the program was formed to produce. So awesome to see that. Let's duck across into tier 1. And
some exciting games here.
The very exciting games, mate. And I suppose let's just kick straight into it. Our Canadian women's team have remained undefeated with a 21-8 win over Ireland. So that's 2-0, and they go in to play England next week at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. It'll be shown live on TSN. So that's number 1 in the world, England, playing number 2 in the world, Canada. So get behind the girls, get behind rugby, find a local pub, find your friend's house that's showing it on TSN, and make sure to cheer on the girls, because it's going to be an absolutely incredible game.
100%. I mean, that Ireland team, like literally, they won last weekend. They gave number 2 in the world a run for the money. 21-8 that's not a runaway. I mean, I watched a little bit of it. Hats off to the Irish women. They're in tier 1 for a reason.
They are.
Yeah, I mean, Canada done well to win in the grand scheme. They always should have won, but it wasn't. They didn't make it easy for them.
No, they didn't at all. Didn't at all. And again, the collisions and the skill level is it's incredible. You know what, mate? I was thinking this while I was watching the game. When I used to be sitting there as a 10-year-old, rugby player watching Australia play the All Blacks, or Scotland or England, sitting on the lounge room floor, the way that the women are playing now, that's kind of what I remembered rugby being when I was a kid, So it's awesome to watch, and again, it's in our backyard. It's in BC, right? Yep. So it's awesome to see. So just quickly to finish up some scores there, mate. England beat New Zealand, the Black Ferns. So England women 49-31. So a high scoring game, and I can guarantee you that the Black Ferns, coming off a loss to Ireland last week, they would have been pretty physical. But it just goes to show the class of England. And then France, in another tight match, they won over the USA. So once again, really close competitive matches there, and a great advertisement for the sport.
100%. Yeah, some of those, like even just I watched the highlights of that France game just before we came on here, Jason. The flair is still real. Like literally, that French flair's not gone. Men's, women's, indifferent. Like the flair's still there, and it was just good to watch. And USA women they're really putting their hand up. So it's super exciting to see that whole tier 1, tier 2, even tier 3. They're all challenging each other. So it's going to be, those standings are going to be changing very much all the way up to the World Cup. So it's going to be interesting.
Now, you and I have got a little bet on this weekend, mate. We've
Sure
got
do.
Scotland.
Come on,
Scotland
Scotland.
taking on the Australian Wallaroos. So we put a
Army
Guinness
versus the Wallaroos, pal?
There you go, mate. So
That's
so
it.
we've got we've so just everyone knows we've got a Guinness on this one, maybe 2 or 3, depending on when we get to enjoy these lovely beverages. But that'll be a great fun game to watch.
Oh, it'll be fun to watch even more now that we've got a few Guinness on it, mate.
Yeah, it is at 9 a.m. though, so
That's
maybe
all right.
yeah. It'll
We
be
do it for
5
the Six
p.m.
Nations
somewhere.
every year, Jason. Six Nations like 6:30 some mornings, and you're still up.
Yeah.
Like it's the joys of loving rugby.
That's exactly right. Now, talking about Canadian women's rugby, Vinny, we again, as you mentioned last week, we are gifted with local legends, and this week is a big name in women's rugby, Vinny, and I'm going to pass it across to you for obvious reasons.
Fellow front row,
Front rower.
We were telepathically, engaged the entire time. We talked. So much conversation. I am excited to introduce the one, the only Calgary, technically Manitoba based, Emily Tuttosi.
Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, for this week's local legend.
Welcome everyone to Rugby ABC, and joining us today is none other than Emily Tuttosi, current Canadian number 2 hooker. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, this is awesome, Vinny, a fellow front row of yours on the podcast.
I think you're outnumbered, buddy, for the first time ever.
Amen.
Well, but why don't you start off? Why don't you give us a little bit of information of how your journey started in the world of rugby?
So I started playing actually when I was a small kid, like 7, 8 years old, in a small town called Souris, Manitoba, and kind of played up through my school and then gave provincial rugby a whirl and was successful, successful in terms of making it. Our age grade programs at the time were a little tough for women. It was a U19 team, and I made it when I was 14. So I was like this tiny runt in playing in the front row against women. And then the next year I was like, at least I'll be a little older, but then it got moved to U20. So I actually wasn't, but kind of stuck through it with that. And then when I was in grade 12, was like, I really want to play still. Not many options now. Thankfully, there are more rugby options in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, but I had known a couple people from my town that had went to Calgary, and they'd had nothing but positive things to say. And so I became a Calgary Dino. And from there, kind of got scouted for U20 Canada, which I actually got told I was playing provincial rugby and got told by somebody on the bus, they're like, congratulations. I was like, for what? And they're like, you made the U20 team. And that's how I found out. I hadn't actually checked my own messages to know. But that was, really cool, because I didn't really know that was a possibility for me, because I always said yes to rugby teams, rugby opportunities, but didn't realize that I may be good enough to go a little further. Played 3 years U20 as I finished out my Dinos career, which was also just very exciting. I think my time in the program, we had kind of had these first, like, winning against U of A and winning Can West and going to nationals. So that was big for me at the time. And then I was like, how can I continue rugby? And dear sweet Simon Shee, who still coaches the Dinos, was like, you could try and play in England. And then I joined the Premiership. That's 7 seasons ago now.
Wow. Has it been that long?
It has, which is crazy. But at the end of my Dinos career, I actually got capped with Canada in a fall tour that was right after the 2017 World Cup, where we got pumped by England 3 games in a row. Like, we're talking scores of 70-something 5. Like, it was pretty bad. And then after that, I actually didn't get picked by the national team for another 3.5 years. But when I was overseas, my coaches would say, "Oh, is your goal to make the national team?" And eventually that wasn't my goal anymore. It was, I just want to be the best rugby player I can be for this team and to just keep having fun playing. And when you work really hard at something, and I think when you find the joy in sports still, it can take you to cool places. And kind of, I guess, since 2020, when we had kind of were able to start getting back into camps from COVID, I had made it as Hook, and thankfully I've been on every tour since then and went to a World's Cup, and I'm here playing WXV on Canadian soil. But yeah, my journey wasn't necessarily one that was as predictable. I didn't even know when I was graduating university that I could be playing Premiership rugby professionally and representing my national team at the same time. So it's pretty cool. The evolution of the sport has unfolded, and I've been like an active part in the evolution and the rise of the women's game, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, before Vinny starts talking front row, Jim, I wanted to go back to when you said you got your first cap, and then you didn't make the team for, I think you said, about 3 years. What was the feeling back then? Did you think your dream was over with the national side, or did you know that there was an opportunity there to come back?
Well, I guess at first, so I made that tour in 2017. I knew that I was a call-up. I knew that somebody in front of me, unfortunately, had gotten injured before the tour in their university season. But as everyone knows in sports, sometimes opportunity comes in various ways. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to take this opportunity. Who knows like where it's going to go? And then the tour wasn't a super successful one for us. We had I think it was 19 or 20 new caps that tour, and England had pretty much their World Cup team. So, and then from there, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to keep working, especially if I'm going to go overseas. I'm going to be playing rugby during like getting so much game time. And then invitations came out, and I did not make the squad or like even the camp. I'm not even talking a team sheet. I just wasn't invited.
Wow.
And then actually when people went on that trip, I was like, I was living in England at the time. I was like, I just need to go on a bit of a trip, get away, because everyone was gone for internationals, were a lot of people. And I was like, so I actually went on this bike trip in Spain because I didn't have much money at the time, but I wanted to get away. I was like, I can bike place to place, and then get a call, and they're like, do you think you can play in the Canada A game that's this weekend? And I received that call while I was taking a nap on an airport bench. I was on my way back already, and I was like, yeah, for sure I can.
I want to go back even further, Emily. I'm very impressed. 14 playing U19 rugby. Now, obviously, I'm not going to disclose how old I am, but I am quite a little bit older. And back in the day, you used to be able to play. You would play U18, U17, U19, and they would all be Friday night, Saturday morning for school, Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday. So you got to play a lot of rugby, right? When you were 14 playing U19, the size difference there was alone. There's a lot of people that say no to that. The fact that you said yes, do you like? What was the driver to say yes? Because it sounds like you say yes to a lot of things, and that's why you're so successful. But there's also a lot of anxiety that goes into saying yes. So what pushes you to yes over doubting it? Do you know what I mean? Is that a question? I don't really know.
No, I get where you're coming from. It's funny because actually I can still picture when I was in grade 9 where we practiced high school rugby was called the Bowl. It wasn't at our school yet. It was just this grassy area in a park, and the coach was like, oh, there's Team Manitoba tryouts. And he had said to me and my twin sister, he said, I would invite you guys to come along. You probably won't make it. It's a U19 team, but like it's a great experience. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to go. Like maybe one day I'll make this. And then we both made it. That was kind of like, okay, well, now we're going to go on this trip to nationals with the team. And we also did a trip down to Minnesota and stuff. And we're like, oh, well, if we get any playing time, like that's going to be great. But like, we had just like kind of went into it literally expecting not to make it, and then being like, oh, what can we do? And then ended up getting a lot of playing time. And it was pretty scary. That was the other thing though, too, is I was like, like reasonably fit and like maybe like big amongst my classmates, but like not compared to people that are in university when you've just finished ninth grade. And I think the thing was I was like, I've never been super flashy as a rugby player, but I knew I was like, but I know that I can work hard and I'm really fit. So I'm just going to go and do that. And whatever the outcome is just like whatever the outcome is. Well, and I think that's completely it. Like even though when things like weren't going my way, I was still having fun or like making these like cool friends or having these experiences. And even when I would go to, before I got capped for the first time, would go to Canada West camps, and Dalika Menon, for example, we were the same year in school. She would make it and then I wouldn't. We had fitness testing or something and she needed help. Like I'm like, well, whatever I can do to help you, like do your best. Or like, I think always just having an attitude of, okay, maybe it wasn't your time, but how can you like help those thrive around you? Like and I still have in recent years paced, like if she's got to do a Bronco or something and she's like, oh, I'm really trying for this time, will you help me? Like I'll run beside you and I'll tell you to speed up, I'll tell you whatever. And I think that's important too, is if something's, you can like acknowledge that there's bumps in your journey, but you also need to try and like smooth others. And I think that's the beauty of the rugby community, is there's so many opportunities. Okay, well maybe I wasn't away here, but then I got to help coach this trip or like this team in that time. And there's always places to get support, or like even if I'm like, oh, it's raining again and we have like, I'm going to coach practice, there's never a practice I leave that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have been there. Like it always, rugby always gives me energy. I mean, it also makes me very sore sometimes, but on a like a spiritual, emotional, like mental connectedness level, like rugby just makes you feel connected to the best version of yourself, for me anyways.
I love it. I love it. And I sorry, Vinny, I just wanted to touch on what you mentioned there, because I know that rugby is an incredibly inclusive sport, but I love it when we're at a training session or we're at the CRU and you look over and all the girls, they just seem to be having an extra level of fun, and there's an extra level of companionship and support in the team. And so I really connect, and I love exactly what you just said there, that even though you may not have been getting selected when you wanted to, you don't go into your shell and carry on like a sport brat. You get out and you help your teammates, which is just such a magic quality to have. And I think that's one of the reasons why women's rugby is just excelling through the roof at the moment.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think in terms of like grassroots or club level, like people in Canada, I think, are learning to love rugby, but they have to know that it's not just, well, you have to try and play provincial, then play university, and then try and make a national team. Like if what you want to do is one day you're in your job and you hear somebody had fun at the rugby club, just show up to your rugby club. And like that in itself, you automatically have a group of new friends. You might have new connections for work or hobbies. Like I just think that it's such an interesting community that spreads so many places in the world, that in Canada, I don't think we're necessarily always exposed to enough rugby to know that it's not elite or nothing. Like there is so much fun to be had in the middle.
We take it as a fully competitive sport, as in you have to be the best of the best, without recognizing that rugby is actually one of the only sports that has a position and a level of play and a non-contact version and a kids version and rule variations all the way down to U4, so that everybody can play rugby safely. Like it's crazy. We actually have a full infrastructure that Rugby Canada does a good job on, especially for the junior levels, to give you the grades, the variations, this is the safety elements. And then when you get to like seniors, you have the social element as well as the competitive element. Everybody's competitive, but not everybody can play for Canada or for their national country. But there are some people that can be very, very good AC or AWP players that you will always remember. I guarantee you're playing for Canada, you've taken the next step, you've made it, but you'll always remember the one person you played with at AWP that was just the rock, the person that you loved playing with, that just wasn't going to make that next step, but they were always there. They were the one that built that, everything was built around them. Yeah. Because that's how those teams are made.
Well, it's so true. And I my first club I ever played for was Brandon Barbarians, and then I had a summer at Saskatoon Kieran, and then I spent multiple years at Calgary Hornets before hopping across the pond. And you just think, like, even some of the people you never would have met, and I can think of moments in random games or finals or this random pitch in Edmonton on an away game. Like, you just, even if it's not the biggest sporting moment or like a huge win, like, you're like, oh, remember that one time when you play against your friends too, you're like, oh, at the bottom of a ruck, we like had a conversation, or like this from the cheek or whatever it was. Like, I just think, like, when I see those old rugby people, and now you see people's life obviously changing and evolving, but you can always be like, oh, well, we were connected from that one team that we were on 6 years ago, but I'm so pumped to see where you are now and how your rugby journey, whether that's just becoming a part of the community or coaching or still playing, like, yeah, it's just so special, especially in the prairies. Like, and I obviously haven't played elsewhere except the prairie provinces for representing clubs, but the prairie grit is just so real as well. Like, some of those like cement hard pitches in the summers, or like the mosquitoes and stuff, and I'm like, but you remember that with your friends.
And the razor blade grass.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. Good old grass rash your first contact session of the season.
And then you've got it for the rest of the season. I love that you also said, you brought up the Front Row Club. Obviously you and Delika are quite well known through the Dinos. You played together a lot, and you still connect and you still help each other get success, right? That's amazing. Like, literally, that's a friendship and a bond that, obviously playing together, you know each other very well. I remember watching when you guys played for the Dinos, when you had a really successful year. You went to Can West, and just everybody was just so well connected that it was awesome to see, right? So you guys having that bond and how you help each other, push each other in different directions, that's not something you make without a friendship, if you know what I mean. So that's awesome to hear that you're still doing it now and you continue to do it for each other. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that. After the match this past weekend, someone had said that, they're like, you and Delika have really played, and I was like, Delika and I are going on 12 seasons of playing next to each other. We had 1 year where we had different clubs in England, but other than that, like, it's been a hook tight head combo that I don't know how many other like front row combos can be like, oh, from when we were literally like 18 until now, we're still like side by side, which is, it's super special. And it was funny because the person had said, and it just kind of looks like you guys know what each other's thinking on the field. And I'm like, because we kind of do, like, like when you're with somebody in so many different coached environments, like you just know how malleable, or like what their play style is, and that's marks the successful rugby team. And I think that's why our national team now is, well, it always has been competitive, but like while we're still doing well now, is the fact that we are just like, the more you know each other off pitch, like the more comfortable it is to make those bonds on pitch, for sure.
Tell us where you are and what you're involved in at the moment. What exciting times.
So right now I'm in Vancouver, and we are hosting the WXV1 tournament. WXV is a new tournament that was brought in last year. There is 3 tiers of 6 teams each in different locations across the world. So this year, 1 is in Van, 2 is in South Africa, and tier 3 is in Dubai. And the initiative is to get more women's teams playing higher quality matches. If you're in the 6 nations, you automatically got 5 in the springtime, and then you'd get your fall test matches. But if you were, say, Canada, say some of the lower European ones, some of the Asian nations like New Zealand, you were only guaranteed a couple test matches a year. So it's really elevated the number of matches, especially for some of the non-contracted nations that can't necessarily afford to be going here, there, and everywhere. So we played against France last weekend, and we had a pretty big win and moved back up to number 2 in the world rankings. And this coming weekend, we play Ireland, who
you do, yes,
recently shook it up by beating the Black Ferns.
Was that their first victory?
No, so actually, a fun fact, they upset, in quotes, maybe they knew they could do it all along, but in the 2014 World Cup, they upset and beat the Black Ferns there. So they only played the Black Ferns 3 times in their program history, and they've actually won twice.
Wow.
Which is a pretty
I did not
crazy
know that.
fact about
Yeah.
Ireland women's rugby.
I got
I
that
thought
wrong.
that was the first one. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Now I want to. I know that we're going to get on to the big game coming up, but I was lucky enough. I raced home and I caught the last 25 minutes of your game against France, and it's always awesome when Emily Tuttosi gets across the line for a bit of meat.
I mean, to be fair, a very good handful of them have to be given to the pack. If I get to touch down off the back of them all. But yeah, this weekend actually wasn't, but arguably it should have been split 50-50 with Courtney Holtzkamp, who pushed me over the line to really
No, it's all you. It's not the forward pack. It's no one else. It's just you.
You have to.
And then this weekend we've got a big game, Emily.
Yes. Yeah. Playing against Ireland. We haven't actually played against Ireland in it's been years. I bet you it's been before my time on the team, so maybe 2017 or 2016 would have been the last time we played them. Very interesting times. We've sat relatively high. Not that the world rankings, like, I guess they mean something-ish, but they're not a be-all end-all. But just for reference, we've sat in the top 4 consistently for the last at least few years. Whereas Ireland in the last couple years kind of was down lower, like kind of 8, 9, 10-ish, but their win actually recently bumped them up to 6th. So,
well, and I hope there's going to be a big crowd following you there too.
Yeah, this game is not at BC Place. We're in Langley. I think it's at a new stadium there. I've never actually been to the stadium there, but I'm excited for it. That's another beauty of, even though Canada's super big, there still are family members of certain athletes trickling in, but also super cool. I even last week had done this like contact confidence session, World Rugby. That's another thing of women's sport, is that the research going into female rugby players is starting to grow. Like, we are also getting more concussion data, more injury data, injury prevention stuff, which I think hopefully in the next few years will also have an impact from grassroots up of what they're finding, and even just be more encouraged. Like, you just feel valued when people are looking at you, and it's not just you have to extrapolate based on the men's data. But athletes from that club had shown up. There's been told a couple buses of different club teams are coming out next weekend. So regardless of the number, I know that whoever's there is going to bring the noise, and it should be a good game.
Would you recommend like any videos on like YouTube? Is there any like resources for someone that doesn't know what neck strength looks like a really beginner platform for some young front rows? Have you got any tips on that kind of stuff? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it's just one of those things that, you know, obviously if you don't know, you don't know.
And no, that's a really good question. I do think that, well, World Rugby and possibly Rugby Canada, not sure if it's translated to there, but like World Rugby will have some of the kind of contact confidence pieces online of just like different neck ISOs and different, like, especially in this one was also some more like kind of forward rolls, backward rolls, like getting used to being in positions that maybe your body's not in your day-to-day life versus when you play rugby. I think that's the important thing with like a lot of the neck or shoulder or like smaller kind of accessory work, is that it's not about who can like lift the heaviest or do the most. It's about having the proper form to really be getting those smaller muscles, ligaments that you're targeting in that. And sometimes I think people go into the gym and they're like, oh, I need to look a certain, you're like, no, just do the exercise you need. And if people look at you, that's their problem, not yours.
Exactly. Things. I do love it. We've got, you know, obviously talking about going to gym, you're talking about micro skills, talking about, you know, little adjustments. That a lot of this stuff doesn't require a ton of time, but what it does require is probably commitment to repetitiveness. So like not doing it once and then forgetting about it, but doing the same micro skill every Tuesday or 2 times a week or 3, depending on what your program is. It's just the consistency and commitment to it. Like
the big thing would be, especially if it's not something that's like you're not causing harm by doing this micro skill. So I'd say go give it a try for a week, for 2 weeks at home, and then bring it back. I'd love to check in with this, but just I also only have so much time as a coach for so many athletes, so I want to make people feel empowered. And the other thing is when you have a couple athletes that do that, they're like, oh, I've been working on my catch pass with my boyfriend in the back garden, and then they come back and they play their next game and they had half the amount of knock-ons. That's obviously an exaggerated story, but people are like, oh my gosh, how'd you get so, and they're like, oh, I literally just went out and did 20 passes each side 3 times a week outside of training. And then it kind of clicks for other people. So I think also having kind of a spark in your training environment is helpful as well, because then people are like, oh, sorry, you just stopped scrolling on TikTok for 10 minutes 3 times a week and that was a difference. Like,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right, where a lot of these kids, they go to training, right? And training's usually the same kind of drills on a Tuesday or Thursday evening. But where they learn those fun skills that take them a little bit further is when they're playing touch rugby at the park on a Sunday with their mates, or they're out the back, with the kids, the local kids, or with their brothers and sisters, just kicking the footy around and catching high balls or throwing it off the fence. And so, it's absolutely vital that you don't just do what the coach tells you to do on a training night. There's a lot more to it. What do you reckon, Vinny? Tight 5, mate? Or because we could go on for hours. Again, every time we speak to our local legend, we could jabber on for hours and hours, but we might end up boring the hell out of everyone listening in or watching. So
I could continue this for hours, but I wouldn't do that, TMs. I'd love to jump in at the tight 5. So you want me to start
kick off, mate? You kick off.
All right. I think we're going to start. First one, favorite rugby player.
It's tough. I think there's obviously a lot of rising women's players and profiles that have gotten bigger.
You can have more than one, Ems. Doesn't need to be one. You can have a few.
I'll name a couple. So a player that I love because they just are obviously groundbreaking in so many different things and have like kind of defied what it looks like to be a rugby player is DuPont, as the world has. Like, they're like, how is this man who is half the size of all these players hold up these tries, go from 7s to 15s? And he's a great example for when people say, oh, I'm too small to play rugby. I go, have you seen this man playing on the world stage?
Yeah.
And
he's...
I was actually chatting with some teammates about this earlier today, but I don't know if favorite's the right word, but like very memorable is like when I first found out that there was women's international rugby. My high school coach had burnt me some DVDs of some women's test matches. And I remember seeing Maggie Alfonsi, who used to play for England, as a back row player. And in high school, I played some back row, but then when I played provincial was hook. And I remember just being like, holy, this woman is like unhinged, controlled violence of these like huge hits. And she just like, that was the thing. I just remember in her, obviously she attacked as well, but I was like, what a defender. And defense is kind of what I love about rugby. And Laura Russell, who I got to be on the same team with, but I remember watching it in my times of not making the team. Like, she was more of the style of hook that I was, like aimed for set piece excellence, wasn't necessarily this like small fast back row that got transferred over to a hook. And I just remember like the grinding spirit of Laura Russell, and her sister Kelly Russell, obviously also a legend of Canadian women's rugby. But I just remember being like, okay, you don't have to be super flashy or have the fastest 10-meter time to be like a real stalwart on the Canadian team. So those are the answers I'll give for my favorite players. Maybe not favorite isn't the right word, but like landmark players for me right now.
Now, Emily, what's one of your favorite moments with your rugby journey?
One of my favorite moments would have been, one of my first favorite moments would have been when we won the Can West title with the Dinos, just because it had felt like such a long time coming. And you know when you're in a program that you're like kind of standing on the shoulders of people that built it. And at that time, the program was still like not even 10 years old. So that was pretty cool. But then recently when we won Pac 4 against New Zealand, beating New Zealand for the first time in our program's history, let alone it being in their backyard earlier this year.
My backyard.
Yeah. I don't know that I'll ever forget like when that final whistle went, like how much joy our team felt in the challenge of it. And before that game, Sophie, who's captaining, she was like, whatever, like talking about like, we know what we need to do. We worry about us this game, like we focus on it. She's like, at the end of the day, there are 15 rugby players wearing black jerseys in front of us. That's all it is. And then we go out to the tunnel and they're actually wearing white. And we all just laughed. We're like, they're not even wearing their black jerseys. But that's probably one of my favorite moments as well, was just like, wow, like what did we just do and what can we continue to do as we lead up to World Cup 2025?
And 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Lots of rugby on the horizon for sure. I'm curious because you mentioned back row and hookers. I'm going to ask this question. We don't ask too many people, but favorite position?
I do think that, well, especially where I'm at now, like hook is my favorite. Like it's the craft that I've gotten to work on and continue to build on. But if I was able to play, like if we're talking more like anywhere, and I had the skill set to match it, I would love to be maybe like a 12 or a 15. Like I think it would be really cool to be in spots where you get such like a vision of the game as it's happening. And especially if you got like a boot on you too, like you can chip over, you can cross kick across. Like I like the skills that I get to work on now, but I just think that would expand. Obviously, if anyone played other positions, it expands your skill set, but it's just a cool vision that I'm always such in the thick of it as a hook, whereas you sometimes get like a broader vision, and I think that's pretty cool.
No, I'd just be I love the fact that you said 12. Like I think that's a pretty, it's a pretty exciting position.
Yeah.
But to say to 15, like those are the skill sets on both of them they have similar skill sets, but that's really exciting. Like literally, going from.
Where's one of your favorite locations around the world you've either traveled to or played in your lifetime?
And it can be rugby or non-rugby, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just favorite place in the world you visited.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Zealand is pretty cool. I do like all the outdoor things that, well, both islands have to offer. But I think one of the ones that sticks out that I also got to play at was Fiji. We were the first time that like a tier 1, quote unquote tier 1 nation had gone to play there. So it was, but we also got to train in one of their only 2 national training centers on the main island, and it definitely is not what we would. Yeah. And it was like kind of on this base, and there was literally just like holes in the walls for windows and like cement weights. And it was, then when we went and did like this movement session in the park, there was literally hundreds of people. Some were doing like dancing and stuff in the park, but then so much touch rugby. Like it was so cool to see the rugby culture. Like they have a $7 bill because of their sevens result. Like it was just nuts to be in a place that like rugby brings people together like that. And it's very beautiful on the coast. Unfortunately, also there's poverty and the world's not perfect, but that was a really cool rugby experience to just like people are breathing in rugby there.
And beautiful people. Absolutely. Just souls of the earth.
My goodness. Yeah.
I remember
Naka to all of our Fijian friends, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I remember when it's Ben Ryan, whatever, and they were at the Sevens in Vancouver, and Ben Ryan gave a speech about Fijian Sevens, and it was just his story in Fiji and blah blah, and it blew my mind that they play touch because there's no rugby balls, like in the grand scheme of things. They play touch with a water bottle with stones in it, and that's where all the offloads and through the and then you give them a rugby ball and it's unbelievably skillful, but that all comes from kids, adults, just creating an environment and creating something from what they have available to play a sport like rugby. We get caught up and we're like, oh, you need a pair of cleats, you need a mouth guard, you need this flash ball, you need a head guard, you need But you don't really need any of those things to have a bit of fun. I agreed. I'm surprised by that answer, but I'm also super happy with that answer. Were you expecting that, Jace?
Well, I've been to Fiji twice, so I'd expect anyone to say Fiji because it's just the most magic place in the world and some of the clearest water you'll ever swim in your life.
I haven't been Antigua, but I can genuinely see why. So bucket list.
It's certainly
item.
not Dundee, mate. Or Aberdeen.
Always go east west, mate, not north south. You should know that by now.
Yeah. All right, enough about Fiji. What's next, mate?
So last one, piece of advice for any upcoming young athletes or adults just getting into the game.
We kind of touched on it earlier, but when I get asked this question, it often is just to say yes to different rugby opportunities, whether that's trying a day at a club or if rugby is in your school, or even if you feel you're like, I really don't know if I can like make a tackle, well, go to a practice, touch a ball first. And like rugby does such crazy things for, especially, and this is just from personal experience, like, but what I've seen and also what I've felt as a woman, like for your confidence on and off the pitch. Like I've seen girls and women come to training and they don't have to be in a rugby environment super long before they go, Emily, I honestly like can tell I'm becoming more confident in other aspects of my life. Emily, I had enough confidence to actually go into a gym. I was too scared before, like all these things. And well, it might seem like a small comment, like that literally could be like the switch in somebody's life to be like, no, you know what? Like I am capable of doing these things. So my advice would just be to say yes and like just be open-minded. Because the other thing is it's not always going to be perfect. You might not have a great practice one day, but that should not dictate whether or not you stay in the sport.
I love it. It's almost like they kind of say yes and try it, but you kind of mentioned, you nailed it earlier. What's the worst that can happen? If you don't try it, you'll never know, right? I mean, that's. I tell you what, we're getting some good advice. The last couple of local legends have just thrown the gauntlet down for advice here, haven't they?
Yeah,
that's right, mate. That's right. That's right. It's well, I mean, you've reached the pinnacle of your sport, and it's not just your physical ability. You touched on it earlier, Em. It's all about your mental presence as well. And so, you've obviously run through all of these scenarios a million times in your head. And it shows. So this is really impressive, and appreciate everything that you've been talking about. Now, what's coming up? I know we know where you are, but what is coming up? We didn't quite finish what's on the horizon for you in the next few weeks.
So play Ireland this weekend, then we play England
4:45 p.m. on TSN.
Woohoo! England the weekend after, and then right after that, I head back to Exeter in England as the Premiership actually gets underway this weekend.
Wow.
So we'll miss the first couple games, as will all of the athletes involved in WXV. But then we go into a pretty heavy season. Our season gets condensed a bit for World Cup prep and Six Nations for next year. So we'll be playing, I think it's 18 games from October to March, which is a decent amount of rugby in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's massive.
So rugby. But I get to actually be in a house, been living out of a suitcase for a few months now. So that'll be nice to unpack for a bit anyways.
And what team, you mentioned, shout out to the Exeter team, but who's the team that you're coaching over there?
I coach the Newton Abbott women's team. Newton Abbott is very close to Exeter. And yeah, they have a very special place in my heart this year, especially. Age is another factor. People are like, I'm too old to try rugby. And the amount of moms or adults that their coworker plays that are like, well, they said it was fun, so I should give it a try, is absolutely, it's inspiring to be around people that, like, I've been hitting people my whole life. Like, whereas these people have not hit anybody, and then they come and they're like, well, teach me how to do it and I'll give it a go. And yeah, it's interesting because people are like, why? Like, oh, we're so thankful for your time. And I'm like, well, I'm thankful for all of your time, because if people hadn't coached me when I was developed, like at certain club levels, like I never would have got to where I am. So I do feel so passionately about contributing to the game in multiple aspects, because that's, again, just the beauty of the rugby community.
Magnificent.
Such a strong statement, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love the fact that you've got a young, well, I won't say young, you've got a rugby club that has, new people join in because the other people are having fun. You must be doing an awesome job, Ems. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
From everyone across Canada and especially here in Calgary, we wish you and the team all the very best of luck this weekend.
Thank you. And thanks very much for having me.
Amazing.
Ho ho. Now that is a local legend. Thanks very much for listening to episode 5 of Rugby ABC. Let's have a massive shout out to our podcast partners, Joker Jerseys, Intrinsi YYC, Ron LeBlanc Photography, and of course, our charity of choice, Kidsport Calgary and Region. See you next week, everyone. Here's to rugby.